Beijing was the first stop on our trip, and we arrived there via Shanghai after an 18-hour flight from Melbourne. A tour representative, Tina, met us at the airport, checked us in, got us to the hotel. The airport was the new airport, and it was 96 kilometres away from our hotel. Ironically, the old international airport was right next door to our hotel. We stayed in the Beijing Chunhuiyuan Resort, which was a hot springs resort. We even had a hot tub in our hotel room, which was great. Breakfast was included and was incredible. On our first actual day of touring, we went to Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City. So Tiananmen Square is the massive square in front of the opening gateway into the Forbidden City, and it's probably one of the largest squares in the world. We went into the Imperial Palace in the Forbidden City, which is now known as the Palace Museum, and it was constructed originally by an emperor, Yongle, who was the third emperor of the Ming Dynasty. And the palace was actually built between 1406 and 1420. But it's been burnt down, rebuilt, sacked, renovated countless times. So most of the architecture that we saw dates from the 1700s and onwards. And really the maintenance regime of a lot of these old buildings is quite incredible. So the other thing that we did on the next day was we went to the Great Wall of China. But before we did that, we went to a jade museum, which was partially about selling jade, but it also ran through the process of how jade is actually worked into jewellery. I found that very, very interesting. And it has a history of 4,000 years, so it's been around for quite a long time. Before we actually climbed the wall to get some sustenance, we had a Peking duck lunch, which was on the way out to the wall. And when we got to the Great Wall, and there are many places, 5,000 kilometres long, where we went to is a place called the Juyong Pass. And as advertised, there were less people there. The walk was still as steep as it is in other places where I've been to before, Badaling, for example. It's a really great experience and probably the highlight of the Beijing trip. Forbidden City was also great, but there are lots of people. 80,000 tickets are sold each day. One day, 80,000. I thought it was a misprint, but that's true. So one of the other things we did, we went on a Hutong, which means alley, pedicab tour and dinner. And that was along the shores of one of the three cylinder-shaped or sausage-shaped lakes which extend out to the left or west of the Forbidden City. So we're at the furthest one, Shanghai, and it's a historic scenic area. And the three lakes, Qianhai, Hohai, and Xihai, and we're at Hohai. And it surrounds places of historic interest, like these old alleys with old houses. And we, after looking through the shopping centre, we went to a gentleman's house who had a background in training actors in martial arts, and we were treated to Beijing opera, the playing of the erhu, which is a traditional two-stringed instrument, and then a cricket show. And that was absolutely hilarious, and it shows the passion that people can have for raising and looking after crickets and these are little insects, and they raise them to fight. And they care about these crickets so much that they don't allow them to fight to the death. I won't go into that too much longer because I could spend a whole hour talking about crickets, but I strongly suggest you look up cricket fighting, Chinese sport or something like that. On the morning before we left for the airport to fly back to Shanghai, we were taken to a traditional Chinese medicine place. Again, it's kind of a shopping trip, but what is good is that the doctors there will actually go through and take your pulse and find out whether there are any ailments that might be remedied by the Chinese medicine. We went through the process, and because we're backpackers, we don't actually buy a lot of things. And that's one thing I do want to point out. Some people say that, oh, this is basically a shopping trip where you're forced into buying things. Absolutely not true. You have a choice, and there is an education component to each of the places that you go where there are shopping opportunities. So whether it is jade jewelry, whether it is silk clothing or bedding, whether it is Chinese medicine, whether it is Chinese tea, there's a learning exercise that takes place. You want to buy, that's up to you. Our flights in and out, fantastic. China Eastern Airlines, modern airline, service was good. One comment is battery packs. Don't take battery packs you might use to charge your phone if they're too large. Make sure you check what the permitted wattage is. The security inspection folk were probably the most concerned about that in doing the inspections, which were quite rigorous, but polite and pragmatic. No problem there. All right, so that was our epic our Beijing epic before we moved down to the southern area or middle area where we went to Shanghai, Wuxi, Hangzhou, and Suzhou. We'll catch you in the next mini podcast.